This one's been a long time coming. For the longest time, I have defended a film called Alien 3. One of the main reasons for that is I think it was one of the first ones I saw. It was either that or Aliens. And out of the Alien franchise, those were the first two films I came into contact with when I was probably a lot younger than I should have been to be watching them. Since then, I have actually been just a little bit obsessed. In particular with the first three. Mostly with the first and third. The second one I really enjoyed when I was younger, but it is much more of a thriller, action, sort of popcorny movie. Whereas the first and third one, for me, make you think a lot more. First of all, the premise of the film is a bleak one, and in the midst of Western films being mainly happy sort of films, I found myself really taken with the tone of Alien 3. The colour palette used was strange and unsettling. The photography direction was brilliant. It was one of the first films to use what's now become a bit of a David Fincher trope of filming everything from below and filming upwards, which meant that the lighting director and all the other crew members had to rethink the way that they would normally, say, just light a room to light the characters that are going to be in front of the camera. Also, they'd have to think about the way they were going to record sound. Where the microphones were placed had to be completely different, because you would normally hang a boom mic from above. And of course you couldn't do that with it being filmed from below, right at your boom mic. Lots of techniques that have now become commonplace began with that film. Not only that, but the xenomorph itself, the alien, the very fact that it took on a different shape, depending on which cut of the film you see, it came from an ox or it came from a dog. Either way, the creature took on a different shape because of the difference in the creature that it gestated in. And of course that's the first time we saw anything like that. Up until that point, I'm not even aware that the comic books were experimenting in that kind of way. But of course after that they most definitely did. You got gorilla aliens, mantis aliens and all sorts in the comic books, and it was all, as far as I'm aware, inspired by Alien 3. The story, especially in the theatrical cut of the film, is a little bit jumbled. There's already been many videos out there defending the film because of the way it came together and the script problems, or lack of. That of course was due to several different directors being attached and several different drafts of the story being put forward. As far as I'm aware, the whole project was greenlit on a version of the script that simply didn't exist anymore by the time it came to principal photography. One of the main visual aspects was influenced by Fincher himself. When Sigourney sat down and said, "How do you see Ripley in this movie?" he said, "I don't know, bald." Which I'm wondering how that came about, but to me it seems like the next logical step. She had really long in the first, quite short in the second, bald for the third. Surely that, that makes sense. Some of the visual effects were, even at the time, sort of questionable. Unfortunately, the way that they were doing effects was still within the realms of film and stop motion. They just started to use CG. As far as I'm aware, they tried to do colouring for the alien shadows and things like that when it was on the ceiling with CG. And unfortunately, it left quite a bad sort of byproduct that I think it happened in a few movies before and a couple after. I think lessons were learnt with this film as well when it comes to that. I think I didn't see an offender quite as bad as Alien 3 after that particular film. So you could say that it helped the visual effects people of Hollywood in general realise their mistake. The composite shots weren't as good as you would hope. Some of the exterior composite shots, although were brilliantly composed, as it were layered problematically, if that's a word, and didn't look quite as good as I'm sure they were hoping it would. On the upside, the practical effects, as usual with all the Alien films, including Alien Resurrection, were second to none. The famous scene with the alien right in Ripley's face was absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately, it was preceded just before that with a very sort of dodgy stop motion CG shot of the alien that looked a lot smaller than it probably should have. From what I hear, that shot was rendered countless times and kept trying to make the alien bigger, and until I think they must have just given up, or somebody said good enough. As you may be aware, David Fincher walked off the film after the first, I think there was an edit put together before they went and did reshoots. I believe he may have had something to do with a few days of editing, and then he walked off the film. Down to mainly studio mishandling the entire film, and mishandling him. As far as I'm aware, they didn't let up on the guy the entire way through. The fact is, though, they didn't let up on Ridley, and they didn't let up on Cameron. The entire crew was against Cameron, apparently. But with Fincher it was different. They really, they knew they had something huge by then. It was the third film. It was a full-on franchise by that point, so they didn't let him go and do what he really wanted to do. And it always makes me wonder what the film would have turned out like if Fincher had been able to stand the scrutiny to the very end. The fact that he didn't, in my eyes, is not a problem. The assembly cut of the film is as close to what you would hope the director's cut would have been of the film. It leaves in a hell of a lot that they took out of the theatrical release. The disappearance of Golic, Paul McGann's character, in the theatrical release didn't sit well with me. Even as a kid watching the film, though the assembly cut fixes that problem, put it right back in there. As far as I understand, the reason they took that out, the thinking was that you take some power away from the creature if you manage to entrap it. In the theatrical version, you're left kind of hollow, like a lot of people got injured and died for nothing, as it turns out. But what actually happened was they managed to do it. Then Golic's character escapes the infirmary and sets it free, under the delusion that he's being guided by the monster. It's quite a good moment. The only thing the assembly cut is missing is that last shot of Ripley going into the fire, holding the chestburster. Now, there are two schools of thought here. Some people think that was maybe just a bit on the nose, and some people think that the Christ pose, for lack of a better term, going into the fire was a little too on the nose in a totally different way, considering they were all convicts that had converted to a form of extreme Christianity. So her going down as like the Christ mother figure was a bit on the nose for those people. I feel like the assembly cut misses that moment, when the actual chestburster comes out, because that way you get a payoff, and they did put that in the theatrical, but it's not in the assembly cut. So I mean, you know, it's a shame, but at the same time, it's fine. Now I know these days a lot of people really are starting to give Alien 3 another chance. I personally, if you listen to my opinion, would recommend the assembly cut, because it's a lot closer to what the film could have been. That film will remain unfinished until David Fincher decides to go back to it, and I don't think that will happen. I honestly feel the poor man was burnt on that one by Fox, even though subsequently he ended up making Seven and Fight Club with Fox in the following years. I think that film left a terrible taste in his mouth, and he never wants to see it again, or any of the footage for that matter. But you know, one day, if he could ever bring himself to touch it again, I would go see that in cinemas. I would buy it. I would re-buy the extended Blu-rays and all the rest of it. That's something I would definitely love to see. Unfortunately, that's something we're never going to see. As far as the rest of the film goes, I honestly do think it is a very good film. I think it had the potential to be even better than it turned out. And as I've mentioned in a previous video, it is not as bad as Alien Resurrection. Alien Resurrection, to me, was an attempt to get it back to that Aliens kind of action movie vibe, but it just didn't work. It was unfortunate because, again, it had potential. It could have been a really good film, but it wasn't. It even put me off a whole bunch of actors as a result. For instance, I used to really like Ron Perlman, and I liked Winona Ryder. This film makes me want to smash Winona Ryder's face with Ron Perlman's face. Those two characters are horrible. She is the most annoying thing I've ever seen in an Alien movie, and he is just a terrible character. And uncharacteristically badly acted by Ron Perlman. I've never seen him in anything before or since where I actually genuinely thought he was bad at what he does. In this particular film, I can't stand him. I think he's terrible. Yeah, that's about it. I've decided deliberately not to cover any of the other Alien movies. It's just that one I really wanted to talk about, because for a very long time it's been very close to my heart, and it's only been recently that people have started to pick up the assembly cut of the film and really give it a chance. And if you haven't already, you really should. It's a good one. Honest. Anyway, that's it for me for now. Thanks very much for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing a hell of a lot more of these sorts of videos, as well as stupid videos, as well as rant videos, as well as other videos, blah blah blah, videos. So yeah, bye for now.